Tottenham Hotspur under Ange Postecoglou are rubbish. But because Postecoglou is a media darling, because he's seen as being a nice bloke, a modern progressive manager, nobody wants to talk about it. He has a philosophy, apparently. He calls everyone mate. And that seems to be enough to masquerade the fact that he is an inept manager woefully out of his depth. I don't like him, I think he's rude, and I don't rate him. But that's all my opinion. Let's just deal in some facts, shall we? How about the fact that Tottenham have won just 3 out of their last 11 Premier League games? How about the fact that they have lost 7 out of the last 11 Premier League games? How about the fact that they have only managed to keep 4 clean sheets in 37 games? What about just 1 win out of 4 so far this season? And it isn't only the results. We could talk about his conduct. We could talk about his dealings in the transfer market. In fact, let's do that. He sanctioned signing Dominic Solanke for £65 million. He sanctioned signing Brennan Johnson for £50 million. Timo Werner. Need I say more? Put simply, looking at his time at Tottenham as a whole, I think it has been terrible. In fact, let's do this since April. It's comical, actually. We are only in mid-September, and we're going to look at this since April. So since April, Tottenham have lost to Arsenal twice. They've lost to Newcastle United twice. Liverpool have beaten them, Man City have beaten them, and obviously Chelsea have beaten them. In fact, the only half-decent result that they've had against anybody good came against Aston Villa. And ultimately, it meant nothing as Aston Villa qualified for the Champions League ahead of them. But I tell you what's more enlightening. If you look at the teams that Postecoglou has beaten. So he's been at the club 2 years. He has won 22 games. Let's have a look at who those victories came against. He's beaten Manchester United. He's beaten Bournemouth twice. Sheffield United twice. And Burnley 3 times. He's beaten Liverpool, which looks good on paper, but anybody who can remember that game knows exactly why he won that game. He's beaten Luton twice, Fulham once, Palace twice. There really is a theme here, isn't there? He's beaten Newcastle. He's beaten Nottingham Forest twice, Everton twice, Brentford, Brighton and Villa. As lists go, that might be the most uninspiring list I think I've ever seen. And it makes me ask the question, has there ever been a more average manager who is more highly rated? In fact, while we're asking questions, has there ever been a more irritable and dislikable manager who is weirdly portrayed as being a nice guy? Postecoglou is rude.
A proportion of your fans won't want you to win this game. How do you feel about that and the potential atmosphere it might create?
A proportion of our fans. What does that mean?
Difficult to say.
Proportion?
Difficult to say how many.
Really? What, 50%? 20%? 1%? Just give me a rough estimate in your mind.
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. All right, so let's answer a question we don't know the answer to.
He is dislikable.
Are you seeing enough in this side that this season you do think that they will be a side that can win? I'm talking silverware.
Yeah, absolutely.
Competing right at the top.
Am I going to answer the question or are you going to keep asking it? No, absolutely. And I think I'll correct myself. I don't usually win things. I always win things in my second year. Nothing's changed.
And you're confident you can do that with this side? You're seeing enough?
Well, I just sort of said it now, so I don't say things unless I believe them.
How ridiculous and rude was that clip? He has a pop at the journalist who's asking a completely legitimate question, and then he says that he guarantees success in his second season. Yeah, you might well do, mate. In Scotland with Celtic. It's very different here, and basically trying to guarantee a turnaround or even silverware because it happened in the past in Japan or Australia is mental. Naturally, because he is a media darling, he gets a lot of love and support. And my Twitter feed has been littered with irate Tottenham and Celtic fans telling me how brilliant he is. And maybe it's true. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's time for me to acknowledge the outrageously brilliant feat that he did achieve when he was manager of the Whittlesea Zebras. Maybe I am judging the man too harshly, and I should extend my sincere apologies to Mr. Postecoglou because I didn't acknowledge quite what a brilliant job he did at the famous sporting institution that is the Melbourne Victory. And of course, the limitless success he had in the Jewel of the Crown in the pantheon of great sporting enterprises, the Yokohama Marinos. And last but not least, we must of course acknowledge the outrageously good work he did at the plucky underdogs in the SPL, Celtic. He took Celtic to the top of the SPL. Bravo, sir. Absolutely unbelievable. In fact, I've got to show you this. When I was doing the research for this video, I actually had a look at his Wikipedia page. Look at this for a CV. How can that CV get someone a job at one of the biggest clubs in the most competitive league in the world? It's an unequivocal fact that he has been over-promoted. Now, being over-promoted doesn't necessarily mean that it won't work. There are loads of examples of managers who have got a job that perhaps they weren't first in line for that has worked out. The obvious example to use at the moment is Mikel Arteta, who was basically plucked off the Man City bench and given the Arsenal first team job. That was an over-promotion and it worked. But what we can't do is use success in Japan, Scotland and Australia as some sort of bedrock to justify his employment at one of the biggest clubs in the country. Because quite frankly, he has been rubbish. Genuinely rubbish. Rubbish on so many levels. Mistake after mistake. Arrogant comment after arrogant comment. Poor signing after poor signing. Idiotic decision after idiotic decision. And most troubling for Tottenham fans is the fact that he seems to make the same mistake over and over again. Some would say stubborn. Some would say principled. I would say pig-headed. Pig-headed. His refusal to sign a set-piece specialist. Pig-headed. Set-piece coaches now are some of the most important people at any football club. When this phenomenon first started out a few years ago, the natural reaction from many was to sneer, but that is not the case anymore. It is an essential, a prerequisite of being a good manager is making sure that your set pieces are on point, and the way that you do that is to hand it over to a set-piece specialist, but not for Mr. Postecoglou. Like, how long is it going to go on? Corners were a major issue for Tottenham last season. And 4 games into the season this season, nothing has changed. Vicario hates defending corners. He can't do it. And opposition managers clearly try to exploit that to a lot of success. So Postecoglou has a situation where Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero don't like defending set pieces. Vicario doesn't like coming for them. There is so much evidence that Tottenham need expert help on this. Think about the corresponding fixture last season. So Tottenham have just been done by their biggest rivals because of a set piece. Now think about the fixture in last season's campaign. Ben White puts off Vicario, trying to undo his gloves. What happened? Højbjerg heads into his own net. This season, what happens? White steps in front of Vicario, Gabriel nods it in, totally unchallenged. At what point will Postecoglou accept that this is a problem that he needs help on? No time soon, it seems. I'll give you his latest verdict. When asked about a set-piece coach, this is what he replied. I'm not interested, never have been, not in the least. Eventually, I will create a team that has success, and it won't be because of working on set pieces. Just for some context here, since Jova went into Arsenal, Arsenal have scored more goals from set pieces than any team in Europe's top 5 leagues. Conversely, since the start of last season, Tottenham have conceded 18 goals from set pieces. Out of Europe's top 5 leagues, it puts Tottenham 7th in the amount that they are conceding. They conceded the same amount of Darmstadt, who went down, and only one less than Luton and Sheffield United, who both also went down. Another major issue that I think Tottenham will have with Ange Postecoglou is that he has demonstrated a distinct lack of understanding of the tribalism and rivalry that exists in football. Bitterness and sneeriness towards our rival is the foundation of the game, and he has no understanding of it whatsoever. Before he'd even been at Tottenham a year, he was telling Tottenham fans who had gone to White Hart Lane for generations, he was telling them how to feel about a particular situation, a complex situation. Tottenham were playing Man City towards the end of the season, and a victory for Tottenham would have ensured that Arsenal won the league. Postecoglou was livid that some Tottenham fans didn't want to win that game. He declared war on those fans, questioning whether they were in fact Tottenham fans or not.
Know what real success looks like. Real success looks like trophies. Anything else in between, bragging rights, whatever it is absolutely meaningless to me, to anyone involved with me. We've got a game tomorrow, we want to win.
And guess what? He was completely and utterly wrong. Any proper Tottenham fan wanted to get beat 10-0 that day, and they were completely correct. And I tell you what, if you didn't see it that way, if you thought it was correct for Tottenham to win that game, you don't really get what football is all about. And Postecoglou has proved that he is on that side of the fence. I would be exactly the same, by the way. If Chelsea were playing Manchester City in a fixture that could guarantee Leeds, Tottenham, Arsenal, Manchester United the league, I would be doing the Poznan as Man City scored goals. But that's not all. He hasn't left it there. More recently, he said that the Arsenal fixture is just the same as any other fixture. He actually said that he hates the idea of having players in his dressing room who want to win that game more than any other. Just to get this right, he doesn't want Tottenham players to want to beat Arsenal more than they want to beat anyone else. He doesn't want players that understand the ethos of the club, the DNA of the club, the fabric of the club. He doesn't want those players in and around the dressing room. It's atrocious. It's appalling. You need players in the dressing room who understand the meaning of the club and the meaning of the fixture. You need the Tottenham players to want it more when they're playing Arsenal, because Arsenal players definitely want it more when they're playing against you. And maybe that's why they batter you every time you play them. Arteta has made no secret about how big he sees this game. I watched some of that All or Nothing documentary, and in that documentary, it becomes so apparent that Arteta is desperate to beat Tottenham, instilling into his players what it means to beat Tottenham. Can't believe that he would come out and say that it's just any other game. It's just another 3 points. Whenever Chelsea have played Tottenham, we have always demanded that the players play more in that fixture, give more, try harder. than they do in any other fixture. And invariably, the players will turn up. If you listen to Eden Hazard talk about playing against Tottenham, it mattered to him. If you listen to Diego Costa talking about playing against Tottenham, it mattered to him. If you listen to Cesc Fabregas when talking about Tottenham, it mattered so much more to him. But for Postecoglou, it's just another fixture. Playing Arsenal is the same as playing Rochdale. Postecoglou wants his players to play with the same intensity against Darlington in the Cup as they do against Arsenal in the league. So there we have it. In my opinion, what we have is a rather rude and rambunctious individual who isn't a particularly good manager, doesn't understand what being at Tottenham really does mean, gets battered every time he plays a good team, stat pads against the worst sides in the league. His talent ID is appalling and he's taking Tottenham on a run that is so atrocious, but for some reason, no one is talking about it. As always, really interested to hear your thoughts on this. Please let me know how you feel about this video in the comments below. If you've enjoyed it, please give it a like, click subscribe. I'm going to put my hard hat on and have a look at these comments. Ooh.